Good evening, and thanks for joining us on this webinar where we'll be presenting our proposal for Sandford battery energy storage system. So I'm Chloe and I'm the Head of Communications and Engagement here at Aura Power. Excuse me, and I'm joined by my two colleagues, Steph, who's the project manager, and Jamie, who's our planning lead on this project. So this webinar is just one of the formats where we'll be launching our initial proposal. We will also be presenting our plans in person at Sandford Village Hall tomorrow, which is Wednesday, the 26th of March, from 3:30 till 6:30. And we're also happy to have any separate discussions, so please do not hesitate to contact us. The slides from this webinar and the exhibition boards and the recording of this webinar will also be available on our website. So before we go into the proposal itself, I just want to explain to you how this webinar will work. So we'll take about 20 to 30 minutes presenting the plans and then open up the virtual floor for any questions you may have for us to answer. Your microphones will be muted for all of the session, but you should see a Q&A button either at the bottom of your screen or on the side panel. And it looks like a speech bubble where you can type your question and then we'll answer your questions out loud. So we'll only be answering questions once we've presented all of our plans. Though please feel free to type your question at any time during the session. However, I would advise waiting till the end just in case your question is covered in our presentation. So this webinar is being recorded and will be available to watch again on our website. If you are watching the recorded version and have a question that has not been addressed, then please do contact us. The purpose of our consultation events is to ensure local people are well informed and we are able to understand local views, concerns and suggestions, which we can then incorporate into our plans that we will submit in the form of a planning application to North Somerset Council. We would therefore like to ask you to complete a short feedback form, which will circulate following the webinar. It's also available on our project page. So who are Aura Power? So we are a renewable energy developer based in Bristol, so not too far at all, just where we are this evening, comprising of a team of around 60 people. We have numerous solar and battery storage sites in development, not only in the UK, but also across Europe and North America. We are a joint venture partner of IB Vogt. They are a leading engineering firm that's built over 1 gigawatt of solar farms worldwide and have also started with battery storage, and they have over 50 solar farms in the UK alone. Our team prides itself on developing solar and battery storage projects to the highest of standards, whilst protecting local sensitivities and offering a haven for wildlife. Our aim is to build trust with local people, to develop a design that accounts for local concerns and benefits the local community. We develop projects from the initial inception through to operation, working with specialist consultants and partners along the way. We work closely with landowners and local stakeholders to power an emissions-free world through the deployment of our projects, and we follow 3 key mission goals to do so. These are, number 1, tackling the climate crisis. So solar and battery storage provide an immediate solution to fighting the worst impacts of climate change, made easier by the massive falls in costs. Enhancing the natural environment, our sites incorporate landscaping to help biodiversity to recover and ecology to thrive. And lastly, engaging with local communities. It is a priority of ours to work closely with the local stakeholders, like yourselves, to understand concerns and develop the best possible scheme. So why do we need batteries? So as we all know, we are in both a climate and ecological emergency, and it's important to recognise why battery storage can play such an important role in the future of the energy sector and our environment. The most recent IPCC report states that the dramatic carbon reductions required globally to avoid the worst impacts of climate change can be achieved due to the massive falls in the price of energy produced from solar and wind. Battery energy storage systems, or BESS, plays a crucial role in driving the UK towards a decarbonised future by storing surplus renewable energy from sources like wind turbines and solar farms. This stored power is then supplied back to the national grid when it is needed the most, helping to match energy demand during peak times. This means we can effectively balance energy supply and demand, maximising the potential of renewable technology and reducing energy prices for everyone. A recent Telegraph article found that Britain is paying almost £180,000 an hour to switch off wind farms because there is nowhere for the excess power to go. This is then paid by the consumer, i.e. in our energy bills. So the increase in battery storage will reduce this curtailment and thus enable that excess power to be stored and the generators not be paid to be switched off so often. Battery energy storage systems are most suitably located adjacent to existing grid infrastructure, where they can import surplus energy from the grid and export it immediately when it is needed. Battery energy storage plays a crucial part in bolstering the UK's energy supply. The UK government has set a target of 23 to 27 gigawatts of batteries by 2030 as part of its ambitious Clean Power 2030 action plan. This is a significant growth from the current 5 gigawatts of capacity in operation. And to put that into perspective, that's going to have to be around 3 gigawatts or 30 times projects of this particular size at Sandford of storage additions per year in the year, every year up until 2030. North Somerset Council has committed to becoming carbon neutral by 2030 and emphasises a need to maximise generation from renewable and low carbon sources. Their new local plan, which is nearing its final round of consultation, states proposals for energy generation and storage from renewable and low carbon sources will be supported, subject to no unacceptable impact on ecology, heritage, landscape, residential amenity and infrastructure assets. Policy DP7 also recognises that energy storage has a vital role to play in enabling a zero carbon electricity system. Energy storage is required to reduce the impact from intermittency of electricity output, which varies according to weather conditions, and to address grid capacity constraints. Renewable energy storage provides reserves for use when demand is high, when supply is low, or at times of system stress. I'm now going to hand over to Steph, who's going to talk to you about the project itself.
Thanks, Chloe. So selecting the site. So our proposed site is located on land directly adjacent to National Grid's new substation to the north of Sandford and to the west of the Strawberry Line. This site area is well separated from residential areas and already relatively well screened, with the ability to further screen the site via additional tree planting. The land is flat, with the largest proportion of it well hidden, plus there is existing electrical infrastructure already adjacent to the site. The land is also not within a green belt and is not protected by any other environmental or landscape designations, making it readily available for development. The land is currently used for grazing and owned by a single landowner who will continue to farm their remaining landholding with certainty from the guaranteed revenue from the battery storage lease. We are also proposing to use the existing haul road for the substation to avoid passing through Sandford. For these reasons, we believe this location is ideal for a battery storage system, and it is our intention to bring forward a sensitively designed scheme that minimises any local impact and maximises local benefits. Next slide, Chloe. Thank you. So battery storage components. So lithium ion is the most commonly used technology as it provides the highest energy density and therefore efficiency. It is also the most durable and commercially available. The battery modules are housed inside shipping containers, and layout designs undergo rigorous strategic safety planning to mitigate any potential risks. The main unit contains a series of battery modules, as well as a range of fire safety equipment, including ventilation fans, fire detection systems, fire suppression systems, liquid cooling systems, and a battery management system to facilitate emergency shutdown. Each unit is complete with an inverter which converts the DC electricity stored in the battery to AC, which is required by the grid, and transformers to step up the voltage from 800 volts to 33 kilovolts. The containerized units are strategically spread at least 3 meters apart. In addition to the units, there will also be a substation which connects directly to the distribution network. Next slide, please. So, the design. This battery storage system will have a capacity of 100 megawatts and will operate on a 2-hour system. This means it will have a total generation capacity of 200 megawatt hours. Our total site boundary covers an area of approximately 3 acres of land that will be under a lease agreement for 40 years with the landowner. The storage system itself will consist of 88 battery units and 22 transformers. A 132 kV substation with additional control buildings is required in order to connect to the grid. The main infrastructure will be housed on concrete foundations, with the surrounding hard-standing area being a permeable crushed stone. The facility will also be surrounded by a palisade fence, painted green. The site area also includes the improvement of existing hedgerows. We are working on landscaping proposals to increase the existing biodiversity on site by over 10%. In 1 2-hour cycle, the facility is expected to power over 100,000 homes, which could save around 25,000 tons of carbon dioxide entering the atmosphere that would have been emitted through an equivalent gas peaker plant. To give a bit more perspective on that, the power stored has the ability to charge around 130,000 electric cars. Battery storage systems are relatively benign. They do not emit any smells, pollutants, loud noises. The site has been designed to minimize any impact on the local community and the environment. Battery storage systems are also not overly noisy. Unlike traditional fossil fuels generators, batteries have no moving parts that generate loud noises. The sound that is produced comes from cooling systems, inverters and transformers, which produce a low-level hum similar to that of an air conditioning unit. Installations must comply with local noise regulations and best practices to ensure they do not cause disturbances. We're working with an independent noise specialist to conduct a noise assessment and ensure there are no adverse impacts on residential amenity and that the noise levels are within an acceptable limit. We recognise that safety will be one of the key concerns locally. Battery storage systems are designed with multiple layers of safety to protect people and property. The units are housed in specially designed shipping containers, strategically spaced at least 3 meters apart to prevent the spread of fire in the unlikely event of an incident. Each unit is equipped with an advanced battery management system that continuously monitors temperature, voltage, and charge levels to prevent overheating or overcharging. As you'll see on the design layout, there's also an adjacent water body. Additionally, our systems comply with rigorous international safety standards and adhere to the latest guidance from the National Fire Chiefs Council to ensure the best practices for fire prevention and emergency response. Proper installation, monitoring, and maintenance further enhances safety, making battery storage a reliable and secure energy solution. We will also be consulting with the local fire service to produce a pre-agreed emergency response plan as part of our planning application. Next slide, please, Chloe. So, construction and access. The construction of the battery storage facility will take place over approximately a 6 to 9 month period. The construction of these sorts of developments are relatively straightforward as the battery units are modular and they're transported ready to connect. The enabling phase will be the most busy in terms of construction traffic, which will take place over the first few weeks of the construction period. This period is anticipated to see a maximum of 38 HGV movements daily, with this including both vehicles driving in and out of the site. Once the equipment has been delivered, the construction traffic will reduce significantly. We are currently proposing to access the site off the existing haul road off Station Road. A construction management plan will be agreed with the council ahead of construction taking place and will likely be a condition on any future approved planning permission. HGV movements will only happen outside peak times and a contact number will be made available for any residents who have any concerns over this period. As a battery storage facility requires little maintenance, after construction there will be minimal traffic visiting the site. Thanks, Chloe.
You guys want to pass over? Go ahead. Okay, yeah, so obviously with this application, we're undertaking a range of different surveys which help us inform our plans to date. This includes the ecology. We've undertaken an extended phase 1 habitat survey. So there are no ecological designations on site and all those in the wider area have been considered in determining the appropriate scope of the survey. We are currently have undertaken a number of ecological surveys over the past year. This includes habitats for birds, badgers, and great crested newts. And buffer from existing ecological features, including trees and hedgerows, are included to protect habitats. And this all goes into our sort of biodiversity net gain for 10%. So a landscape assessment has been completed and includes assessment of the impact on landscape character and visual impact for residents, roads and rail users, and users of the public right of way. The assessment concludes that the effects on the landscape character and visual amenity would be extremely limited. And for flood risk, the built development is located within a flood zone 1, meaning this is a very low risk of flooding from rivers or sea. A flood risk assessment will be submitted with a planning application along with the landscape and ecology, which will be available for the public to view once we submit. Next slide. So we've undertaken a noise assessment, and this will be in accordance with industry standards to ensure that any noise emitted is within statutory noise limits. The noise assessment is currently being undertaken and will be required to show it has no adverse effect on any of the nearby receptors, this including obviously housing and dwellings. Residential amenity is expected not to be negatively impacted, and there are no noise-related issues anticipated to arise during the battery storage facilities operations. It should be noted that, as with any construction project, there will inevitably be some noise disruption during the construction period. However, we will do our utmost to minimise this and ensure local residents are well informed of the construction activity timings. So a heritage desk-based assessment has been undertaken to consider potential impacts of the development on designated and non-designated heritage assets. This will be determined if a geophysical survey will be required. And the land currently has been assessed as subgrade 3, which means it's not best and most versatile, and it's currently being grazed. Okay, that's all from me.
Great, thank you both. So local benefits. So we are committed to being a responsible and considerate neighbour, ensuring that our battery energy storage system benefits the local community while operating safely and efficiently. This project will provide several local advantages, including, like with any new development, there will be a boost to the local and national economy through new jobs, use of local services and local suppliers. The total investment of a project of this scale is around £70 to £100 million, and a large proportion of that is spent locally, is projected to be spent locally. So the facility will also be contributing significantly in business rates collected by North Somerset Council. They're calculated at £313,000 per annum, totaling over £13 million over the project's lifetime. In addition, we will also be offering funding for local community, environmental, social and educational projects, and we'd love to hear from you regarding any suggestions. Consulting with the local community is critical to designing the best possible scheme and ensuring local people are well informed about the project. So following this consultation, we will look to incorporate the comments of the local community and interested parties into our proposal. We'll then finalise our proposed design and planning documents and aim to submit our planning application by May. After the application is submitted, North Somerset Council will undertake their own consultation process and invite local residents to comment on the plans. We will continue to work with the planning officer and statutory consultees once submitted to address any comments raised. Our aim is to submit a proposal which not only complies fully with the local plan and national planning policy framework, but one which the local community can support. The planning determination period for developments of this scale can be unpredictable, but we hope to have a decision before the summer of next year. If approved, we will be seeking to accelerate our connection date through National Grid's new grid reform process, with the intention to complete in time to connect by 2029. Typically, a battery storage facility of this size would take between 6 to 9 months to build. And as I've said, if you would like to speak to us in person, we will be holding an in-person exhibition at Sandford Village Hall tomorrow. That's Wednesday, the 26th of March, from 3:30 till 6:30. And if this isn't convenient for you and you'd still like to speak to us separately, then please do not hesitate to get in touch. We'll also keep you updated on the progress of the development by email as we move through the next phases. So thank you for listening to our presentation of our plans. We'll now answer any questions that you have. If you haven't done so already, please type your question using the Q&A button. It's a little speech button, and then I'll read out those questions and one of our project team will answer. So hopefully we can answer all of those questions during this session, but if we're unable to, or you're not satisfied with our response, then please do get in touch to discuss anything further. So I can see that we've had a few questions already. A few here from Richard. Thank you very much, Richard. So number one, how many installations have you already fully installed and are working? So Richard, we installed, or we brought forward one of the first battery storage projects in the UK, which was at Lockleys in Bristol, and that is a 20 megawatt site, and that's been operational since 2017. We also, it's now owned by another company, I might note, and similarly, Feeder Road battery storage, again in Bristol, a 15 megawatt site, has also been operational for the past year. And then we have other projects that are now operational. They are now owned by other operators. One near Cambridge, a 50 megawatt site. And then we've got multiple other projects that we have developed up to what's called RTB, which is ready to build, which have been acquired by other companies, and they're due to be constructed over the next couple of years. We're also bringing forward a number of other battery storage projects. We did a similar exercise for a larger battery storage project slightly further north of the country just last week. So your next question, how many employees do you directly employ? Currently in our Bristol office, we have 50 full-time members of staff. How many full-time engineers do you actually employ? We do have a small team of engineers working in our Bristol office, but we also work with external consultants, specialist consultants and engineers also to evolve our schemes. You've also asked a question here about our accounts. So I think it's important to just briefly touch upon the kind of model of how a developer kind of operates in terms of the individual SPVs, special purpose vehicles, that we set up per project. I'll let Steph touch upon that.
Yeah, thank you, Chloe. So in order to develop all the projects that we do, they have to be in their own SPV, which stands for special purpose vehicle. So where you have a different special purpose vehicle, all of the project rights are within that company, basically. And the overarching company would be Aura Power, so all the Aura Power battery, Aura Power BESS, or Aura Power Solar, depending on what technology it is. And I think what you're referring to there on the 2023 accounts might be Aura Power Developments, which is obviously the entity that employ ourselves and all the workers here. I can't comment on what's on Companies House, but we are definitely still trading as it is March 2025. So yeah.
Thanks, Steph. Yeah, hopefully, Richard, if you want any more information on how we're set up as a company and what those SPVs look like, then I'm more than happy to send you more information for some additional reassurance. But as Steph said, I could assure you that we have been operating since 2013. We have multiple SPVs set up per project, which when you Google Companies House and Aura Power, that's why there's multiple companies for a project, but that's the same for all developers. Just going to move on to your next question. Excuse me while I read it. Okay, you've mentioned, are there any alternatives to Chinese suppliers? So China does dominate the manufacturing industry, and that's in battery storage modules and solar panels specifically, which is obviously the areas that we specialize in. You're right in that there are other manufacturer locations like the US and India. Currently, the plan is to use SunGrow batteries, who are based in China. But yeah, it is certainly something that we can put forward to our procurement team. Okay, just moving on to some other questions as opposed to comments here. Is there any advantage? You mentioned that battery storage is particularly useful for intermittent sources of energy such as wind or solar. Is there any advantage to these being near battery storage, or is it necessarily via the grid? Steph, do you want to pick that question up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not sure if I completely understand it. Is there any advantage to these being near the battery storage, or is it necessarily by the grid? So I think the question there is kind of saying, should we have battery storage units next to or within the wind farm or within the solar farm, or is it better to be connecting directly to the substation, i.e. National Grid substation? So ultimately, a battery storage project will need to export and import from the grid, whether you're based at the wind farm or at the solar farm. It is easier and better to be right next to the grid infrastructure because it reduces costs in terms of cabling to and from that specific substation. And if we are able to reduce cabling costs, which cables are extremely expensive, if you can reduce those cabling costs, then that reduction in the generator cost itself will be passed on to the consumer. So we know that solar energy is the cheapest form of energy, electricity generation. Still, wind is more expensive. But it's extremely important to be close to the network to reduce the costs of that electricity transport.
Thanks, Steph. A couple of other questions and comments that have come in here. One from Joe. I understand that a battery storage project has to be on the grid. The question relates to the difficulty of a new generation project getting a grid connection.
All right, now I can answer that if you want. Cool. So yeah, you're absolutely right. A new generation project is going to find it quite difficult to get a grid connection in the UK today. There's a lot of stuff going on in terms of grid reform. National Grid, electricity system operator, are coming forward with a lot of different grid reforms. What I would say is that this battery storage project, we applied for the grid a very long time ago. I actually can't remember exactly when we applied, but that grid connection offer has been with us for a while. So we are further up in the queue than if someone was to apply for the battery storage grid connection today. So yes, you're absolutely right. Getting a new grid connection is extremely difficult. But what's going to be really interesting in the next few months is to see what National Grid's reform is going to come up with. And our project at Sandford here is really, really well placed to basically be a really needed project next to the new Sandford substation. I hope that answers the question a bit better.
Joe, I know you're coming along tomorrow, so we can have a little bit more of a chat on kind of the grid reform process, which is a little bit more complex. But as Steph has correctly mentioned, that is something that's happening at the moment and is designed to kind of eradicate a lot of projects that are in the queue which aren't looking to connect, which aren't ready to connect, and accelerate those projects which are ready to connect. So in terms of having planning permission, land rights, etc. Okay, so a couple more comments here. No mention of Aura Phoenix. Okay, Richard, Aura Power Phoenix is it's a collection of projects that we are putting forward as a portfolio that we're bringing through into construction. So that's the setup of Aura Power Phoenix that you may have come across on Aura on Companies House. You've also reiterated the point of buying or sourcing our modules from a negative country that actively works against the UK. This is unfortunately the case that the world that we are in. I mean, obviously a lot of things, a lot of technology is from China. It does dominate, like I say, the renewable energy market when it comes to manufacturing. As you correctly identified, there are other manufacturers, and ultimately, we're proposing to use the modules that we're using now, but that could change. So when we come bring the project forward, depending on what that connection date looks like, that'll be something that's assessed once again by our procurement team in terms of the best best manufacturer and supplier available to us at that time. Okay, I think we've come to the end of our questions. I hope we have addressed them satisfactorily. As I have said, if you don't think we have and you want to talk to us even more, then please do get in touch directly. We will be at the Village Hall tomorrow in Sandford, so please do come along. We'd love to see you. We'll be presenting the same information as we have done on this webinar, but obviously we'll be there in person. So if you are watching the recorded version, you can find the feedback questionnaire on our webpage. Just to note that your personal details will not be passed on to any third parties and will only be used for the purpose of this public consultation. So thanks again and good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.